Welcome to Artificial Fluency, where we explore complex topics in English. I'm your host, John, and joining me is our AI assistant, Emma. Today, we're diving deep into the world of Superman, focusing on the upcoming film and how it compares to previous iterations.
Hello, John. I'm excited to dissect this iconic character's journey on the big screen. We'll be examining the new Superman movie, comparing it to past versions, especially Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, and discussing the transition from Henry Cavill to David Corenswet as the Man of Steel.
Excellent, Emma. Let's start with a brief history of Superman in cinema to set the stage for our discussion.
Certainly, John. Superman's cinematic journey began in 1978 with Richard Donner's Superman the Movie, starring Christopher Reeve. This film set the standard for superhero movies, blending humor, action, and heart. It presented Superman as a beacon of hope and optimism, a tone that defined the character for decades.
That's right, Emma. How did this portrayal evolve over time?
Well, John, after the Reeve era, we saw a long gap until Bryan Singer's Superman Returns in 2006, which attempted to continue the tone and style of the original films. However, it was Zack Snyder's Man of Steel in 2013 that truly reimagined Superman for a new generation.
And that brings us to the comparison with the upcoming film. How does James Gunn's vision seem to differ from Snyder's?
Based on the trailer and Gunn's comments, there appears to be a significant shift in tone and approach. Snyder's Man of Steel presented a darker, more conflicted Superman, grappling with his place in the world. The film was characterized by muted colors, intense action sequences, and a focus on Superman's alien nature.
That's a great point, Emma. Can you elaborate on how this contrasts with what we're seeing in the new trailer?
Absolutely, John. The trailer for Gunn's Superman seems to harken back to the character's roots while still maintaining a modern sensibility. The color palette is more vibrant, reminiscent of the comic books. Gunn has emphasized that this film is about kindness and being a force for good, which aligns more closely with the traditional view of Superman.
Interesting. How does this shift in tone manifest in the visual style and storytelling approach?
Great question, John. Visually, we're seeing a metropolis that feels alive and vibrant, unlike the somewhat generic city in Man of Steel. The trailer shows us iconic locations like the Daily Planet and the Kent Farm, but they're presented with a sense of wonder rather than the gritty realism of Snyder's film. In terms of storytelling, Gunn appears to be embracing the wider DC universe from the start. We see glimpses of characters like Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and Mr. Terrific. This suggests a Superman who is part of a larger superhero community, rather than the isolated figure we saw in Man of Steel.
That's a fascinating contrast. How do you think this will affect the character development of Superman himself?
I believe this approach will allow for a more multifaceted exploration of Superman's character, John. In Man of Steel, much of the focus was on Superman's struggle to find his place in the world and his internal conflict about using his powers. Gunn's version seems to be starting from a place where Superman is more comfortable in his role as a hero. This could allow for deeper exploration of his relationships, not just with Lois Lane and his immediate circle, but with other heroes and the wider world.
That's an intriguing point, Emma. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about the actors portraying Superman. How do Henry Cavill and David Corenswet compare in the role?
This is a complex comparison, John, as we've seen Cavill in multiple films, but only have brief glimpses of Corenswet from the trailer. However, we can make some initial observations.
Henry Cavill brought a powerful physical presence to the role. His Superman was stoic, intense, and carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. This aligned well with Snyder's darker, more serious take on the character.
David Corenswet, from what we can see, seems to be bringing a softer, more approachable quality to Superman. His Clark Kent appears to be more in line with the traditional bumbling reporter persona, which is a departure from Cavill's more confident Clark.
Those are interesting distinctions, Emma. How do you think these different approaches might affect the audience's connection to the character?
That's a thought-provoking question, John. Cavill's portrayal, while impressive, sometimes felt distant due to the character's internal struggles and the overall darker tone of the films. This Superman was often burdened by the responsibility of his powers. Corenswet's Superman, based on what we've seen, and Gunn's comments, might be more relatable and inspiring. By focusing on kindness and being a force for good, this version of Superman could serve as a more traditional hero figure, someone for the audience to look up to and aspire to be like.
That's a great analysis, Emma. Now, let's discuss how these different portrayals of Superman reflect the changing landscape of superhero films.
Excellent point, John. The evolution of Superman on screen mirrors the broader trends in superhero cinema. Snyder's Man of Steel was part of a wave of darker, more realistic superhero films that gained popularity in the wake of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. However, in recent years, there's been a shift back towards more optimistic, colorful superhero stories, largely influenced by the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Gunn's Superman seems to be part of this trend, but with a distinct DC flavor.
How do you think this new approach will affect the wider DC universe on film?
Based on what we're seeing, John, it appears that Gunn is setting up a rich, interconnected universe right from the start. Unlike the Marvel approach of slowly introducing heroes over multiple films, we're seeing several DC characters in this first trailer. This could indicate a DC universe that's more established from the beginning, with Superman as a central figure. It might allow for more complex storytelling and character interactions right off the bat.
That's an interesting strategy. Do you think it will be successful?
It's hard to predict with certainty, John, but it's definitely a bold move. On one hand, it could be overwhelming for casual viewers who aren't familiar with these characters. On the other hand, it immediately establishes a diverse and exciting superhero world that could captivate audiences. The success will likely depend on how well Gunn balances introducing these elements with telling a compelling core story about Superman. If done well, it could set up a unique and engaging cinematic universe distinct from what Marvel has done.
Thank you for that insightful analysis, Emma. As we wrap up, what do you think are the key takeaways for our audience about this new era of Superman?
Great question, John. I think there are several important points to consider. This new Superman film represents a return to the character's roots as a symbol of hope and kindness, while still maintaining a modern sensibility. The shift in tone from Man of Steel to this new film reflects broader changes in superhero cinema, moving from darker, more realistic portrayals to more optimistic and colorful ones. The introduction of multiple DC characters suggests a rich, interconnected universe from the start, which is a different approach from previous superhero franchises. The change from Henry Cavill to David Corenswet as Superman isn't just about a new face, but potentially a new interpretation of the character that's more approachable and inspirational. Ultimately, this film could redefine Superman for a new generation, balancing classic elements of the character with modern storytelling and a diverse superhero landscape.
Those are excellent points, Emma. This discussion has certainly deepened our understanding of Superman's evolution on screen and what we might expect from this new film. To our listeners, we hope this exploration of the upcoming Superman movie has been enlightening. Remember, analyzing films like this can be a great way to improve your English skills. Pay attention to the dialogue, consider the themes and character development, and don't hesitate to discuss your thoughts with others.
Absolutely, John. And for those learning English, superhero films can be a great resource. They often use simple, action-oriented language, and their themes of heroism and morality are universal, making them accessible to a wide audience.
Thank you, Emma, for your insights today. Until next time, this is John.
And Emma, signing off. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.